Hi, I'm a 62-year-old architect from India. I was hesitating a lot before doing this video because there are so many videos on YouTube. Most of them are quite captivating visually. After all, architects do have the training to make skillful presentations. But over time, I realized that they are all catering to one cluster of attitudes in my field, one that revolves around something they call as good architecture. This is something that has continuously plagued our field. At least for the last 45 years, I have been in this field. Today, we are talking about presentations and videos on the internet. Earlier, I have sat in conferences and lectures where much of the same attitudes were on show. There is so much leaning towards a kind of aspirations in formal architecture that the subject with its widest ramifications are forgotten. I saw videos made by other architects with beautiful photographs about notable buildings and very evocative prose to match those. I saw young architects who probably have not really got into full time practice giving their tips on the principles of architecture. And all those principles are to do with how the building should be appealing visually, harmony, rhythm, balance, all that. To hazard an analogy, it is like economists who will talk only about the life led by the rich and famous and extol the virtues of charming but expensive goods instead of talking about economics as a field as a whole. Well, to give credit to videos on economics, I have not seen such seminal biases in that subject. They do cover a lot of things. But why is it that this is so common in the field of architecture videos? I wonder why we are repeating the same thing again and again. The irony of architecture today is that those who would love to tap into the knowledge of a trained architect often cannot be part of our system. It is only those who can afford to make a break and rebuild a piece of architecture till they are fully satisfied are the ones who can afford us. Today, architecture sadly is very narrowly defined by the aspirations that are floated around, one that leads to good architecture. The field hardly discusses architecture of the very poor, for example, one who cannot even afford a shelter, say a pavement dweller, one whose space is not defined by some bounded walls around her, but the space she inhabits is by the sheer will of the person to survive on that pavement. Where are those discussions? Architecture theory should be talking unemotionally about the whole of architecture and then show ways by which one could contribute value at every part of that scope instead of gravitating towards knowledge that can make its way into coffee table top magazines, okay, beautiful pictures, all that. Over time, I realized that this has reached quite farcical levels and it is dangerous too. I believe the definition of architecture should cover all kinds of spatial usages, not just those inspirational and aspirational ones. If this were to happen, say, in mathematics or music or literature, it would be akin to saying, I will not be doing art to uplift the poor or the marginalized. I will only talk about those things which are very fancy and whatnot. It's also dangerous because every year young, fresh architects graduate with stars in their eyes, wanting to adhere to such aspiration because they are listening to such kind of lectures, which often results in overly visual, over the top designs with too much concrete and whatnot. Almost 40% of all the global issues which we face today can be traced to architecture. And I'm not talking about bad architecture, for which architects would want to say he or she is now going to, which architect will say that? Okay, I'm going to design bad architecture. Okay, I'm talking about countless architects and other manipulators of the built environment. There are many uh, who create their works without realizing they can cause harm, right? When people don't willfully say that I'm going to cause harm, but serious harm has been caused. Okay, so for someone or the other has done something to the built environment to contribute to that nasty 40%, right? Somebody has contributed to it. Why did it become 40%? So, as a first step, I think we should start with a workable definition of what architecture really is. This is the 21st century, and we need to come with a definition that embraces all the nuances of this information rich, AI led era. One that covers the widest scope of architecture, one with many touch points where architects can contribute into. Actually, what I'm talking about is very practical also, because this can help young architects pick up their career. To put it broadly, I would define architecture as a subject that talks about the context of life. We architects have to train ourselves to uplift the context for each and every human experiencing that context. We tend to think that humans had only one main context for their lives, which is the physical environment around them. Sure enough, in case of the context of the built environment, often the context involves the physical world into which humans have to be ensconced. They have to be protected, nurtured, encouraged, and uplifted there. But the physical context is not the only context in which a human lives. We live in a political context, an internal psychological context, and so on and so forth. So each of those contexts would need some kind of architecting, albeit with skills and knowledge in that area. That is why the word architect is used in many such contexts. Architect Charles Correa once quite famously asked this question: why do we have the phrase architect of the nation? Why not something else? Which is quite true. We need to reflect on this. The question is quite sharp. Why don't we have a phrase such as chartered accountant of the nation? And the answer is what I alluded to earlier. Architects are the context setters of humanity. Today, the internet has introduced another context which is very similar to the concept of physical space, and that is of the internet, which is cyberspace. This is also a context humans are deeply involved in. Just look at a group of friends sitting in a cafe. At that point in time, they are in two kind of spaces. One is in the physical space of that cafe. The other is the space which they dip into as they glance into their Instagram feed on their phone. As they talk to each other, they're also doing something on their Instagram account or Twitter or whatever. So, to summarize, in this first lecture, I've tried to give a wide and clear definition of architecture, a subject that uplifts any context anywhere without first defining some preconceived aspirations that architects need to reach. I believe in today's age, architects have to contribute to all kinds of use of space, be it in the physical world or that inside computing devices also. I do a good amount of software development along with architecture, so my future videos will cover that aspect too. There are other contexts to which uh, we need architecting, such as the economical context, the political context, and so on. But since I'm not trained in that area, I will not probably be talking much about it, other than maybe I'll see if I can conduct some interviews with some people who can say how the economic context is being uplifted and things like that. But that does not mean that those contexts does not need architecting. All context needs proper architecting. So thank you for listening. I hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.